Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Don't Want to Accept My Help Trying to Mend Our Business Deal?" Okay, let's make things difficult. So almost a couple of years ago I had a guy that emailed me back and forth for months. He was pretty cool but picky beyond belief and couldn't decide on what he wanted. Finally, though he ordered this ultra-deluxe, 4-player arcade machine wrapped in Star Wars graphics, he spared no expense, spending $3,000 plus $220 shipping. The machine arrives in Melbourne 5 days later and he calls me up losing his crap. It's been damaged by the freight company. I send everything fully insured, so I assured him it was okay, he's covered. Please send me the pics of the damage. It was only very slight, nothing cosmetic, but the console was a little dislodged as they must have stacked something heavy on it. I assured the customer it could be fixed, I'll contract a cabinet maker to come out to him and repair it at my expense, then I'll go through insurance later. Nope. He didn't want that. So I said okay, I'll arrange for collection and have it brought back to me, and I'll issue him a full refund including freight. Nope. He didn't want that either. Okay, I said, what would make you happy then? It's something easy to fix, perhaps I can pay you what I'd pay the contractor, about $250, and you can fix it? Nope. He wanted a full refund and he wanted to keep the machine too. I said that won't happen. Insurance won't allow it as the damage is tiny. It's like car insurance, they won't write off a whole car for minor damage that can be fixed. He didn't care, he wanted a refund. I said they won't do it, and I certainly won't pay out of pocket. Either I'll arrange collection of the unit at my expense and issue a refund to him, or we have it repaired. Nope. He paid via XY online payment system and he's putting through a dispute because the item didn't arrive as described. I advised him that XY online payment system's rules also state that in order to get a refund, he'll need to show proof that he'd sent the item back or arranged with the sender to have it collected. Nope. He's keeping it and getting a refund. So I advised him that what he was committing were fraud and theft. Also, XY online payment system will freeze the $3,220 in my account and I'm not at fault here. That's what XY online payment system does, you see. If anyone lodges a dispute, they automatically freeze the funds in the seller's account. It's guilty until proven innocent with them. It can also take up to 90 days to resolve, sometimes 6 months. I know, it's happened before. He didn't care. The next thing I knew, I had a notification from XY online payment system. The funds were frozen pending the dispute. The next step is stating your case to them, providing evidence etc. where they relay the info back and forth between the buyer and seller. XY online payment system always sides with the buyer. Sellers are a piece of crap as far as they're concerned. If it can't be resolved between buyer and seller, then you can opt to have XY online payment system decide. But their decision is absolute. I provided my transcripts advising the customer that I'd collect the item and refund him, and he provided them with a fake pickup receipt. As far as they knew, he's done his part, now he's eligible. So they ruled in his favor. So this ducker now has his money back and my $3,000 machine. I was fuming, and he wouldn't answer my calls or emails. I'm a big guy and I had a rough upbringing in a tough neighborhood, so I was about to jump into my truck, drive the 900 kilometers south, knock on his door and watch him crap himself as I repossess my machine. But my wife is the voice of reason, calmed me down and said to try legal avenues first. Coincidentally, he emails me 3 days later and says the computer in the machine stopped working. I replied, which ducking planet do you live on where you steal an item then complain it doesn't work? He lol-ed me and said he had an IT guy. A few days after that I get a call from a guy saying that his friend bought an item and the hard drive is dead. It was his IT guy, and I don't think he knew the whole story. I asked him to find the serial number, it's just the date it was built and the iteration, for example, 2,312,201,901. He read the number out and I said, "Oh, it's in warranty, send it back and I'll send a fresh new one." He bought it and sent it back. Now note that he said the HDD was dead. That's a good thing. If it had been the computer, he could just use anything else and use the HDD as a backup. But since it was dead, and now I had his computer too, he has to buy a new system which would set him back at least $450, but he still couldn't play games in it. You can download the apps, but there's a ton of config work and button mapping, etc. IT guy calls me a few days later asking for the computer, and I told him the story and that nope, he can go F himself. He also lol-ed and asked how hard it could possibly be to just download crap. See, what he didn't know is that I have a little fail-safe built in. The encoder I use isn't mapped to the default keys on the apps. I changed everything around on the hardware to stop people from trying to just clone it. It's not hard to get around, but most people aren't familiar with the nuances of emulators. Inevitably, I get another call a few days later from a different guy saying that he'd built his own machine but couldn't get it working. The symptoms were exactly that of trying to get my controls working on a different system. It was definitely the IT guy phishing. I played dumb and said I didn't know, sorry. Now, this guy had an empty useless cabinet, so he left me a 1-star review on Google. It's since been removed, but it read something like, "Poor quality build, flimsy, the system doesn't work, do not buy from these people." I was about to jump into my truck again and drive down to that duck face. But again, my wife is like a bucket of ice water to my fire. So I wrote a long letter to XY Online Payment System attaching all of my evidence of his fraud. Then I responded to the 1-star review with attachments to the emails and his admission to committing the fraud. Also, I displayed his name and email address to smoke him out. He immediately called and said, "Look, no hard feelings, okay, but I received a damaged item and I'm entitled to compensation. Remove my details." He was getting spammed relentlessly, but he seriously believed he did nothing wrong. I told him to go F himself and to enjoy his useless machine. I was still burning though. I forgot about it after a few weeks. XY Online Payment System didn't respond, so I cut my losses and moved on. But then something beautiful happened. It's as though the universe aligned and said, "Hey Abs, we're not going to crap on you today, here, take this gift on a silver platter." I was on eBay looking for old non-working machines I can buy and refurb. There's good money to be made doing that. A one-day refurb could pull in over $1,000 profit. He's listed my machine. But contrary to his Google review, the description was marvelous hand-built arcade cabinet built by a master carpenter, flawless finish and quality, missing computer. Good for a DIY project. I'm not a carpenter by the way. He had it listed for $1,100. That was still $1,100 pure profit to him since he got it free. I bought it under my wife's account and had it delivered to my home address. When I sent it, it was wrapped in about a 4-inch thick layer of bubble wrap. When it arrived, it had a flimsy single layer less than 5 mm thick. The courier who dropped it off was the same guy who picked up from me. We were good friends and he knew the story. So I said I was going to damage it, make it look serious, but nothing I can't fix in a few minutes. He agreed and said that he'd log the damage due to insufficient packaging. Insurance won't cover it. I knocked the panels out from inside so it looked like the machine had been crushed. Realistically, I only had to reset the screws and it was good as new, but it looked mangled. Then I sent Melbourne Dickhead the pics and complained about the damage. He said it was insured. I advised him the courier said it was insufficiently packaged and that it's not covered. I want a refund, take this back. I knew he wouldn't take it back, it was totally useless to him. He said he didn't want it and he'll refund the freight. I said nope. I can't do anything with a damaged machine. If he doesn't do anything, I'm filing a XY Online Payment System dispute under item not as described. He wasn't happy, played the victim, played on my sympathy, still not realizing who I was. Eventually, after offering me partial refunds and getting rejected, he relented and told me to keep it and he'd refund me in full. He must have realized that his greed wasn't worth it and it cost him nothing. So now I had my machine back and I was happy this was over with, still upset at this guy's audacity, but meh. That's not the end though, it gets better. Oh, does it get deliciously better. Someone at XY Online Payment System Business had finally read my complaint. Since I do a lot of work through XY online payment system under a business account, there's kind of a concierge service, although not really, kind of like a priority service. They actually went through my complaint, verified that his pickup docket was actually a year old and unrelated, and read the transcripts of him intending to keep the machine and get a refund. They refunded my money in full. Now I had my machine back and $3,000 of his money, and he couldn't do anything because he got caught for fraud. Can't dispute crap. If you got caught being dishonest. He called me up losing his crap. I laughed and said, "Sorry mate, it's karma, it's purely up to my goodwill to refund you, go suck a doorknob." He pleaded and begged, swore a lot, pleaded more, and I said I'll think about it. Legally he had no leg to stand on. But I have scruples. I donated it all to charity on his behalf. I sent him the receipt. He lost his crap some more, but now there were kids with food and clothes because of his douchebag-ness. The next one is titled, "My neighbor's kid shot a bullet through my wall." My next door neighbor kept pounding on the shared wall when I was loud. A couple of months of that, and then one day I come home to a shattered mirror in my room. I can't figure out what happened, and then I see a bullet. Look around and find a hole in my wall. It looks like he shot a gun into my apartment. I called the police. They pulled him out of his apartment since they thought he might be a threat. When he saw me, he started screaming, saying he was going to kill me. He thought I was pulling a prank on him. Didn't help his case. Come to find out, his son fired the gun and didn't tell anyone cause he thought it got stuck in the wall and didn't want to get in trouble. The next day I was in the apartment manager's office telling them what happened, and the guy had the balls to come in and complain to them that I called the police when I could have just asked him what happened. They kicked his butt out after 2 weeks, bypassing the 30-day eviction notice due to firing a gun in his residence. Had to see him in court one last time. He told me I was a prick for calling the police. The next one is titled, "My neighbor is the worst at parking, but he does it on purpose." A neighbor across the street can't park. His adjacent neighbor teaches piano from home, so parents are coming and going for a few hours in the afternoons. If anyone is parked on the curb between their houses, large enough for 2 cars, easy, he'll go out of his way to back his car as close to the bumper as possible. Even if he obstructs his own driveway. Puts a lot of work into it too. His Subaru B9 Tribeca doesn't have a backup camera, so this pasty older man in a shirt and tie backs up, gets out, looks at the distance to the car, gets back in, backs up, gets out, checks the distance, gets back in, backs up, and on until he's a hair from the other car. I had to park near his house while I worked on another car. He pulled this crap while I was staring at him. 4 minutes. Was just waiting for him to make contact. Of course, his wife parked in front of my house all the time. He denies it. Now his wife's car is permanently parked in front of their house. I've half a mind to report it and get it ticketed. The next one is titled, "The worst neighbor I ever had was a prostitute." The worst neighbor I ever had was a prostitute, a very pretty, normal-looking, big-breasted, petite lady that was a prostitute. I never noticed when she moved in because I never saw a truckload of furniture being brought into her apartment or anything like that, so I met her one random day when she was pulling up in her red Toyota Camry. She was wearing heels, a very revealing top, and a short skirt. Her hair was short and curly, and her hips swayed as she walked into her apartment without even taking a glance at us. I looked at my husband and his mouth was halfway down to the floor. I am not the jealous type and I was in awe too, so I just closed his big mouth and moved on. A few hours later that day, when the sun had gone down and the stars, or city lights, began to shine, we heard a knock on our door. Like always, I made my husband open and see who it was. It was a chunky male saying he was here for Tatiana. My husband looked confused, told him there was no Tatiana here and asked if he had the right apartment number. Turns out he was looking for little Miss Curly-haired next door. We thought nothing of it until the next night when 2 guys at separate times knocked on our door looking for the same Tatiana. I wondered why so many different men were always looking for Tatiana. This went on for a few days. Annoying knocks would disrupt our sleep, would make us pause our show, would make us shut up so they would think no one was home, and would make me scared. We became worried because we had a baby and we never knew if these men were going to do anything else or why this kept happening. I finally went to the leasing office, and the young leasing lady, who I got along with very well, showed me an ad they had found online. A very sexy Tatiana posed in very provocative ways on a lonely sofa sitting in a living room that looked very familiar to our apartment homes. Her ad stated what services she offered, the prices and address, but no apartment number. I gasped. Finally, I realized why I never saw her move in furniture. All she needed was that sofa and the floor, I guess, or maybe she had a mattress in her bedroom. My neighbor was a prostitute, and her clients were the ones knocking on my door. Damn you, Tatiana. The next one is titled, "My Neighbors Broke Every Single Rule of What It Means to Be a Good Neighbor." I've been very blessed to have experienced only good neighbors for the majority of my life. Even when I lived briefly in a haunted house in St. Louis, the neighbors were very nice people. The worst neighbors I've ever had moved into my neighborhood some years ago when I lived in a lovely 2-story house in a beautiful location. The house was in a gated community with a very strong homeowners association (HOA) in a very nice part of North Dallas. The brick and stone houses were all on 1/2-acre lots. For the most part, they were impeccably maintained with manicured lawns. There was a lovely wild preserve close by with lots of trees and beautiful flowers. I lived quietly and happily in the neighborhood for a number of years until one of the next-door neighbors decided to retire and move to a small East Texas town. Instead of selling their home, they decided to rent it out in order to generate passive income. Initially, the house renters were fine. They were quiet and were nearly invisible. After the first set of renters left, the next renters were truly the worst neighbors I've ever experienced. Someone didn't do a very good job of vetting the new renters, or they just didn't care. The result of that lack of attention resulted in the arrival of very bad renters. The second set of renters consisted of multiple families complete with a caravan of old, broken-down cars. They showed up one day in a parade of old rusted-out pickup trucks and proceeded to move into the beautiful single-family brick residence. It was hard to keep track of all the people coming and going, but at one point it appeared there were at least 12 adults, maybe as many as 15, living in a home which had originally been designed for a single family. An assortment of strange people was seen coming and going at all hours of the day and night. The house appeared to have a revolving door. In fact, at times the glass storm door was left hanging wide open. Sometimes the front door was also ajar. It was very strange compared to the very quiet demeanor of the rest of the neighborhood. Unfortunately, if I opened my front door, it opened right out into a trailer overflowing with their junk. Sometimes there was so much junk in the trailer, which wasn't secured, I wondered if they spewed junk all over the road as they pulled the trailer behind their SUV. They also had 4 other SUV-sized vehicles which they parked end to end, leaving no room for several neighbors to park their cars. Heaven forbid if there had been any emergency need for first responder vehicles. They would have had to park a block away. The neighbors had a 2-car garage and driveway in the back off the alley. The garage was packed top to bottom with trash. When the garage doors were open, it was like a scene from a hoarder's reality TV show. I was amazed that they had packed as much stuff into the garage as they had. The first time I drove by and saw the garage doors open and the massive amount of stuff packed inside, I couldn't look away. 2 old cars were parked in the driveway in front of the garage on cement blocks. Eventually, they had dogs which barked non-stop. All day and all night. They let all the beautiful grass in the front yard completely die and turn to dust. It was the only house in the neighborhood with potholes of dirt in the front yard. Whatever grass managed to survive on the sides and in the back grew to 4 feet high and was overgrown with weeds. Trash was strewn in the backyard. It was almost as if they didn't want to throw trash in the cans, but would just open the back door and throw it out into the yard. Eventually, an old broken-down bright yellow panel truck was added to their fleet of vehicles and parked in the extended line behind the open trash-filled trailer. There were many days when they would move furniture in and out of the trailer and truck for hours. I have no idea what they were doing, but often wondered if they broke into homes and stole the furniture. Although they were a complete eyesore on the neighborhood, they didn't try to engage with anyone on a personal level. A few times I did smile and wave at them, but they just ignored me or glared back. I did my very best to ignore the happening next door as much as possible. It was none of my business what they were doing, as long as I didn't see dead bodies or witness anything that seemed overtly criminal. As long as they left me alone, I was fine. I strive not to be a busybody neighbor and try to live my own life, not minding the lives of others. I do try to love my neighbors and treat them with respect. These neighbors definitely tested my resolve. Unfortunately, their presence did a lot to degrade the property values in the neighborhood, which added to their unpopularity. Many of the neighbors on my block complained constantly to the city because of parking, noise, weeds, high grass around the dirt holes, and trash violations. They also complained to the Homeowners Association, who levied fines and sent angry letters to the original homeowners. After 2 long years, the bad renters left suddenly in the middle of the night. A huge pile of furniture, clothing, trash and assorted items was left stacked up outside their house in a mound by the street curb. The house was completely trashed to the point it had to be completely redone from top to bottom. The yard had to be completely landscaped and the privacy fence had to be replaced. It took multiple crews of workmen several months to completely repair all the major damage done to the house by the bad neighbors. I often wondered if the amount of rent the homeowners received from the bad renters covered the extensive amount of money they had to spend to repair the house to make it inhabitable. Luckily, once the house was repaired, it was sold to a very nice, quiet family without loud barking dogs or trailers filled with trash. The bad neighbors did so much damage, the house was basically redone to almost brand new condition, which actually helped the neighborhood housing values. The neighborhood HOA also tightened their regulations for renting residences, although there was only so much they can do. The moral to this story? Always pay close attention who you are renting your property to and respect your neighbors. The last one is titled, "My neighbors threw a football through my kid's window. It was right beside his bed." My next door neighbors are loud and destructive. They're in their early 20s. I'm older, 42. My 9 years pod son threw a baseball on his roof, the boyfriend who is a night shift worker, and jumped up and down on his roof shouting for joy when he found his ball and dropped the plastic ball he was carrying down his chimney. I guess he was sleeping until that and not after. He barreled out the door within 2 minutes and called my kid a son of a witch. We laughed, but 3 nights later they start hitting the wall with what I guess was a hammer. This is like 2 a.m. My kid gets up and comes into my wife's room saying the neighbors were going to hit him. My wife has me get up and take a listen. Sure enough, the girlfriend is shouting at the witch boy, as they call him. For your information, this is a townhome. And while the woman bawls, someone, presumably the boyfriend, kicks a football through our upstairs window where we are, covering my boy's bed in chunks of glass. The woman on the other side of the wall shrieks, "How do you like being disturbed, witch boy?" The next day we get a new window and they don't come back until a week later when they throw a ducking wooden penis with nails in it into our reserved parking space. We told management, but they didn't get evicted for about a month. The eviction notice came when they urinated in my grill I left outside. Oh, and they, for the last straw, stole close to $500,000 worth of baseball memorabilia, and carved dicks in a rare bat and left it. Note, I still sold the dick bat for $50K, but it was originally worth like $300K. Thanks for listening.